In a shocking new revelation, Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner stands accused of a heartless act. The Daily Telegraph exposes how she allegedly used a £160,000 trust fund from her disabled son's NHS compensation payout to purchase a luxury seafront flat. This follows a massive scandal over her taxes and property dealings. Now, the question on everyone's lips. Will Sir Keir Starmer finally sack her? Her political career is hanging by a thread after this alleged betrayal of public trust. First off, if you haven't jumped on board yet, hit that subscribe button and join this little family that's growing thanks to you.
Angela Rayner used £160,000 from a trust set up to care for her disabled son to buy the £800,000 seafront flat at the centre of a sleaze inquiry. The Deputy Prime Minister sold a 25% share of her house in Ashton-under-Lyne to that trust for £162,500. Now, she said on Wednesday that her son, who was born prematurely, had received an award in 2020 and that a trust was then set up to look after his interests. Bear that in mind. His interests. The Telegraph understands that the payout followed what was an 11-year legal battle waged between Angela Rayner and her then-husband and the hospital where her son was born. Now, sources suggested that the NHS had paid compensation following difficulties during his birth and subsequent care back in 2008. Now, final payments from some of these awards can take years to be made because it's a lengthy process for assessing long-term damage, etc., etc. And it's as yet unclear exactly how much money was paid out as part of those damages claims, but it was clearly sufficient for the trust to buy Ms. Rayner's share at the end of January this year, that share of her house. She then used that money as a deposit on the flat in Hove that she purchased in May this year, on which she now has a £650,000 mortgage. However, she only paid £30,000 in stamp duty rather than 70 grand that should have been paid in tax when purchasing a second home. And that caused the initial furore, didn't she? That's why she was very close to crying her heart out with Beth Rigby this morning. Ms. Rayner, having previously insisted that she'd paid all appropriate tax, now accepts that she made an error. Now, she's blaming that on legal advice that she was given when she bought the Hove apartment. However, really, as the Secretary of State for Housing, which she is, I think it might be difficult for her to plead ignorance when it comes to stamp duty rules in relation to housing. In a lengthy statement released on Wednesday before this latest revelation came out, and again I'll just read it to you, that Angela Rayner used her disabled son's NHS compensation to buy a second home. I'm going to go over now to my panel, who we've got this evening, to get them to dissect this. We are joined by the Director of the Popular Conservatives, Mark Littlewood. We've got Reform Councillor Jamie McIver and journalist and broadcaster Nina Mishkov. I don't know if I might be able to play a little clip, guys, before I go to you, just to remind our viewers and listeners of what Angela Rayner said this morning. So this was in an interview with Beth Rigby earlier today. Here's what she had to say initially.
That what she's done is she's taken round about 160 grand of cash from her son's trust fund, in return for which her 17-year-old, I think he is, son, gets an extra 25% share in the house in Ashton-under-Lyne. So the first question is that actually in the interests of her 17-year-old son? Is that what would be in his best interest, his share in that house going from 50 to 75%? Is that really what he needs? Or was it done because Angela Rayner fancied buying a property in Hove? If the latter, then she's in problem on trust law as well. If her son, for some reason, needs a 75% share in a home rather than a 50% share, I'd like to know why. There's still, in my view, no satisfactory explanation about stamp duty. She's obviously got to put whatever advice she took in the legal domain. But look, it's not that complicated. If you go to the government's own website, it explains it in 3 or 4 paragraphs. She shouldn't have made that error. She probably shouldn't have needed legal advice.
The The insinuation here, at total face value, the questions of this, Jamie, is has the Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister in charge of Housing dipped into her disabled son's trust so she can buy a swanky new pad in Hove 200 miles away from her disabled son?
Well, that's a question. And, you know, was that a fair valuation? Was it inflated? These are all things that I'm sure will come out. But what I don't understand, Patrick, is if you're a Member of Parliament for Ashton-under-Lyne, firstly, why would you not want to live in your constituency? I don't understand that. But why would you want to live on the south coast of England if you are the Member of Parliament for Ashton-under-Lyne? I just don't understand. I don't understand any of that early basic. You know, you're first and foremost a Member of Parliament. You are then Deputy Prime Minister, Secretary for Housing, but you are a Member of Parliament. You should be so excited to go home to your constituency at any opportunity.
Do you want a cynical explanation, Jamie?
But why Brighton? That's what I want to know.
Ashton-under-Lyne's going to be won by reform. She realises that.
Right.
She thinks she's got half.
It is if there appears to have been, as she said initially that there were some issues about she could not say what this court issue was, and I wonder whether what is that? So has she tried to hide the fact that she ultimately sued the NHS for money?
That's possible. I think it's more likely that the settlement with the NHS included a privacy clause. That's my best guess. We will give you this amount of money, but we all accept that we will not talk about it. That's my guess.
And there's also the privacy of her son.
Yeah.
You know, he's 17 years old. They've been fighting this for 17 years.
But she's lived on a moral high horse.
Giving it out.
She's a divorced woman who has every right to buy a property.
Her response to Tories getting into these difficulties wasn't, we need to look at the facts. Perhaps they made a technical error. Her response at that time, just a couple of years ago, was they must resign immediately.
Yeah.
So
no sympathy at all was shown that it could be a clerical error. So I think she's got to live by the same rules.
It's good you bring that up because actually at 10 p.m, what I have done is compile a list of all of the times that Angela Rayner has called for other people to resign in even significantly less murky circumstances than this. I've also got a clip for you of every single time that Sir Keir Starmer told previous prime ministers to either sack people preemptively before reports were put into them or said that they should resign as well. So the point here for me, and we'll come on to this, is basically the left is vicious. They are savage. If someone does something wrong or there's a perception of impropriety, they want you gone, they want you cancelled, they want you to resign in disgrace, they want you sacked, they want you to never work again. And those are the rules, in my view, that Angela Rayner and Sir Keir Starmer and vast swathes of the Labour Party have lived by for years. And now we end up in this situation, and as her son was born prematurely 5 days after her waters broke at 23 weeks. The locum doctor at the hospital in Stockport telling her that she had suffered a miscarriage. Her son weighed less than £1. Ms Rayner once describing him as resembling a baby sparrow. After his birth, he was taken to a bigger hospital in Manchester where he spent 6 months in the neonatal unit in which he suffered a grade 4 bleed on the brain. She is now told how he is registered blind and has special educational needs, describing him in a Twitter post celebrating his 10th birthday as her miracle son. The Rayners set up a trust for their son in 2020 following the payout, and that payout came in 2023, and they transferred half the ownership into the trust, which was then valued at £650,000.